Right. Hello, everyone. Yes, you can hear me, I assume. Okay, I think it's time for us to start. We are starting a little late, but we don't plan to go on too long. We'll make sure there's plenty of time for people to chat and so on. We today are holding a CAS50 panel, and if you don't know what CAS50 is, but you don't know what CAS is, that'd be quite surprising, Computer Art Society. But the Computer Art Society is celebrating 50 years this year, so it was established in 1968. And what we'd like to do in this panel is really reflect a little bit on the influence of the Society over that 50 years, which is quite a phenomenal amount of time, really. I don't know if we have George here.
No, I don't think we do.
Oh, okay. Well, we were hoping for George Mallon, who's one of the co-founders, but we still have a few stalwarts to talk about some of the early days as well as the contemporary impact of CAS and so on. So I think what we'll start by doing is having a little sort of discussion. Well, actually, no, a little bit of mini presentations from the panelists, and then if we have time, we'll have a short discussion. And then we have a couple of launches, the CAS website and also Francesca's new book. So do you think we should start by doing that, just having a bit of a chat with all the panellists? So I'm really not going to say much about the sort of the history of the Society, because I'm going to say a bit later on about the archive we're producing. So maybe we'll start by having a few words from Ernest Edmonds.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Sean. So, Computer Art Society was really quite important for me in the early days, as it still is today. Maybe I'll make a few comments about things that were important, and they're all to do with connections to things. So, for example, I was introduced to the Computer Art Society just after it was formed by my colleague Stroud Cornock. I don't think he's here, although he should be. And we came to the Computer Art Society meetings. We gave a talk about what we were doing at what was in those days called Leicester Polytechnic. And I remember I discovered that the sort of stuff we were doing in software engineering, using something which some of you may have heard of called the waterfall method of design. You do one thing after another and you make sure you get the specification right before you do anything and so on, was rubbish and didn't work for anything like a creative user, and that we needed to do something iterative. I found it very difficult to tell anyone this, because they said the waterfall method was the only way to do it. If you didn't know what you were going to do before you started, you shouldn't start. Nowadays it's called agile design or agile programming, and it's all quite normal. And in those days it was only in the context of the Computer Art Society that I seemed to be allowed to talk about it. And then the next thing that was important was quite soon afterwards, there was a conference called Computer Graphics 70 held at Brunel University. This was very interesting to me because the Computer Art Society had a stream about computer art, and exhibits were shown in the exhibition of computer art. Stroud and I gave a paper about computer art, as did a number of other people, and we had our first exhibit of what was my first interactive artwork there. And I mention it because let's compare it to SIGGRAPH. SIGGRAPH is very famous for its work with computer art and for computer artists. I like it because SIGGRAPH are being very nice to me these days. But Computer Graphics 70 was before even the first SIGGRAPH conference, let alone the first time SIGGRAPH did anything to do with art. So I think the Computer Art Society can say it was very innovative in those days, actually getting computer art into a computer graphics conference. This was very important. And I think that the Computer Art Society has been important to me too in another respect. There's an important letter in its name, and it's an S on the word art. It's Computer Arts Society. At the very beginning, this was because it was concerned not just with the visual arts, as in the computer graphics context, or interaction, but also with performance, dance, music, and so on. And this was very visionary, I think, of the Computer Arts Society to be careful about having that letter S in its name, because since then, many of these things have merged. It's almost impossible today to think about art just as visual. Mostly, these things have merged. Audio-visual performances are the sort of thing that computer artists do all the time. And the arts have become a merged realm of media. And that is another thing that is very important for me and many of us today, that the Computer Arts Society made a big thing about back in those very, very early days. So there, how's that?
Good, perfect, yeah. And now we'll hand over to Francesca Franco.
Hi everyone. Well, my connection with CAS dates back to when I was a PhD student, and my research was about the history of computer art and media art at the Venice Biennale from 1966 till 1986. And my PhD was based at Birkbeck College here in London, and that's also where the Computer Art Society archive was at that time placed and stored. This is also where the Cash project started with and Charlie Deere, which was my supervisor. And so basically the collection of part of the CAS material, including the page bulletin, was extremely rich of contributions from artists that I was researching in my thesis. So Page basically enriched my research and my work. So just to give you an example, one really funny article that I found there that I included in my thesis was this famous now article that Frida Maake wrote in 1970, titled "There Should Be No Computer Art," which is typical of Frida. So I then published my part of my thesis about the 1970 Venice Biennale and the first experimental computer art show there, and including all these references to Page. And that was published by MIT in 2013. And now that bit of history appears on the wall of the computer division, which is called the wall, which is quite cool. My research now continues following the history of pioneering computer art, and I always kept a connection with CAS and its various events. I published a book, which is just that I'm going to launch later, and basically I've been working with artists that have been connected with CAS for many years, like Ernest. I also started curating exhibitions in my hometown in Venice, and again, my aim in that case is to make computer art accessible to larger audiences and non-specialized audiences. So my latest curatorial project there was an exhibition called Algorithmic Science. I invited 5 pioneers of computer art, including Ernest Edmonds, Frida Maake, Roman Roscoe, Manfred Moore, and Vera Molnar. And I also made a documentary about this whole curatorial process that was on show yesterday, and it's going to be again shown Thursday night as part of the V&A Digital Futures. So basically, as I said, one of the major challenges for me is to build new audiences and make computer art, which is considered still a niche field of research, acknowledged by the more conventional and traditional art history world. And in this sense, I'm really grateful to CAS computer art and its creators, and they make their work accessible through their archives, through their events, and the exhibitions. So that's
Great.
that's all it is.
Now I'll hand over to Paul Brown.
Okay, thanks. One of our speakers tonight was supposed to be George Mallon, the surviving member of the three founders of the Computer Art Society, and sadly he's not here, but he could have spoken much more knowledgeably than I could of the history and the founding of the Computer Art Society. But I am very pleased to be able to let you know that Nicholas Sutcliffe, the partner of our principal founder, Alan Sutcliffe, who sadly passed away a few years ago, is here in the audience. And it's lovely to see you, Nicola, and thank you for coming. Back in 1968, I was a young emerging artist working in light shows in Manchester, and somebody said that there was a show on in London that I would like. I hitchhiked down, and it was Cybernetics Serendipity. And for those of you who know my stamina for art exhibitions, I can be in and out in half an hour. And I spent 3 days at Cybernetics Serendipity. And I think many other of us who were there, this changed our life. I know that Sue's here, Sue, who also had a life-changing experience at Cybernetics Serendipity. And what I discovered was this thing, the computational metamedium, call it what you will. It was a medium that was suitable for my crazy ideas. And back in the 60s, that was a real fantastic thing to have found out about. I didn't get involved in the Computer Art Society until the mid-70s, after moving to London to continue my postgraduate studies at the Slade School of Art in their experimental and computing department. And I guess we were all, there were very few of us in that department, though we had a lot of influential visitors. Harold Coyne was a regular visitor and so on. And we were all very optimistic that we were the future of art, and that soon there was going to be a major revolution and we would take over the universe of the art world. And of course, just a few years later, something very, very different happened. The postmodernists took over instead. And we became the total anathema of the art world. We were the evil artists who worked with the scientists who made bombs, and art and technology was not to be exhibited, and we couldn't even get through the door of the art galleries. And so for 20 years or more, we really found it hard to talk to the mainstream art world. And it's thanks to the Computer Art Society and other artist-run groups like Tranquillina's International Society for Art, Science and Technology, who published the journal Leonardo, to the IZEA organization, and Sue again, the director of IZEA, is here. Ernest is chair of the board. The SIGGRAPH Art Show, which 81 was the first year I was there. By complete coincidence, I entered a room, a birds of a feather room at SIGGRAPH, and there were 50 people in that room who all did computers in art. I had no idea there were that many people in the known universe who worked with computers. It was marvelous to just be opened up to this new community. And then there's regional initiatives like the Australian Network for Art and Technology, which I chaired for several years, and they sustained us through this whole long period, 20 or 30 years, when we couldn't be shown in major galleries, but they offered us opportunities to discuss our work, to meet together internationally, to exhibit, and so on, and to communicate with each other about our work, and so on. And I'm very grateful to all of those institutions, and especially to the Computer Art Society, and I'm pleased that I've been able to contribute as a committee member to several of them over the years. And so I'd like to especially thank Sean for all the work that he's put into the CAS50 celebrations that are going on throughout this year. Really excellent work onto the archive, which he'll be speaking about in a few minutes. And I hope I'll be around, if not for all, but for some of the next 50 years of our existence. Thank you, Sean. Thanks, everyone.
And now we have Nick Lambert, thoughts?
Well, thank you very much, Sean, and I'd like to second actually what Paul has said about your thanks for the setting up, thanks for sort of putting these together, and also the exhibition that you put together in Leicester, which I think deserves a special mention for bringing together, I think, a very coherent approach to the aesthetic and the development of the art that's been associated with CAS over the years. I also have a very big debt of gratitude to Paul, because in fact, in many ways, it's due to Paul that I myself got involved in CAS, which I first encountered at the Bodleian Library in Oxford in 1997 as artifacts of history. I was actually reading the issues of Page as I set out on my doctorate, looking at the history and evolution of computer art. And at that time, I had no idea, no inkling at all that I would eventually end up working with the artists and actually, to some degree, helping to sort of revive the Computer Arts Society in the mid-2000s. And that, again, was an outcome from the Computer Arts Context Histories, etc. project that Burke Beck and Charlie Gear. And really the work that we did to get V&A involved to actually put together the archive of works that CAS has assembled over the years. And I think what's really interesting is that we've got here the sort of material of digital art, actually, and sort of very sort of paradoxically as a physical thing. And that physical archive was the basis from which we could then rebuild some of the digital history also, and get to understand, I think, the process and the mindset. But more than that, and the thing I valued far more than that, was actually getting to know the founders of Computer Arts Society, especially Alan, very much an absent friend this evening. Obviously George, and I'm just very sad that I never got to meet John Lansdowne. I really think that would have been excellent as well. But really to understand, I think, on the basis, people like Frida Narka, Roy Ascott, of course, although not a CAS member per se, but somebody very much involved in that history too, and of course Yasha Reichardt, with her own sort of anniversary this year as well, which is most important. So I think trying, as a historian perhaps, to grasp something of the context, something of the knowledge, something of the ideas and exchange of ideas that was going on at that time, which is why in 2010, with Francesca, as the outcome of the Computer Arts and Technocultures project, we were actually gathered in this very room for a conference called Ideas Before Their Time. And one of the best things about that was at the very beginning of the conference, Alan Sutcliffe stood up and denounced us all, saying that in fact they were not ideas before their time, they were ideas of their time. And in fact, this was very much about, a reflection on what had been achieved rather than perhaps something in the sort of far distant future that we were always sort of pushing towards. As Paul said, that sort of moment when computer art takes over the universe, etc. And yeah, I feel I've learned a great deal, and it's very good to actually now be fully involved in the Computer Art Society and perhaps guiding it towards its next developments and the things that may sort of come as we discuss about further exhibitions, further developments of publications, ways that we can actually spread the word more fully, and also engage with the many other organisations out there which are also doing a lot to promote contemporary digital art, not least the Lumen Prize. I see Carla at the just towards the back there, so name check for Carla, and of course our many international partners as well, not least Bruce, and not least the many other people that we work with, such as Leonardo and Isaiah, and really this sort of community of interlinked organisations that helps to spread the word. So it's not a dead letter, it's far from being an artefact of history, it's not at all dusty, it's something that's actually evolving and ongoing, and so it should. So without further ado, I'll pass to Rona Ferren. Thank you very much.
I'll follow that. Hello everyone, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this short series of presentations. I haven't been involved at all with managing or implementing CAS for the last number of years, but I have availed of it and I've benefited from it. I've met and learned a lot from Alan, exactly this tonight, and Gustav, and have sort of realised that, I think, and George too, that if they were here, they'd be telling us not to get all sentimental and whatever about its past, and remember why it has developed in the first place. And I was looking through some of the pages today, and one of them, I think it's page 29, March 1973, I think it's the point where Gustav was allowing other people to cast edit or whatever. I sort of opened it up and realised there was a little ad saying subversion in Chile, a case study in US corporate intrigue in the Third World, Spokesman Books 1972. It just reminded me of Gustav's input. That says a lot. He doesn't need to write anything. It sort of is a statement, I think, of what CAS brought together. And I suppose I first came across Computer Arts Society this century, really. I was working as Director of Interdisciplinary Arts at the Arts Council and very much involved with emergent media practice and net art from the mid-1990s. And a lot of that was really just happening at the time, and the whole idea of the network internationally was emergent. And I was lucky enough to meet Ernest around that time and learned a lot from his wisdom. And then met people we did a DVD about Gustav and his life and his whatever. Through that met Alan and others. And I think it set me off on a trail that I'm still on in a way. And I think that what I realized that was the Computer Art Society, even at that time, was very much a collective thing. It wasn't about the big names and the star artists and the person who stands out. It was very much about people pulling together, as they are now, saying, would anyone else like to help out? Toujours la change. But in some ways that was, it was a value thing, which I think hasn't gone away, but it also made me realize that it wasn't starting from nowhere. There wasn't a vacuum around the Computer Art Society, or even Cybernetics Serendipity, that people were starting to investigate what Ernest calls computational thinking within arts practice from probably the 1950s onwards. And 10 years before Cybernetics Serendipity, you had Max Benzi at Stuttgart trying out text and computation. And I got quite interested in the interface between poetry and computation at that point. Gustav talked about it to me quite a lot. And I realized that there'd been an exhibition in Cambridge in 1964, and which I started to investigate, having done an exhibition called Poetry Language Code in 2012. And looking at Ernest was included in that, and realizing that he had somehow evolved. His work had shifted from making concrete poetry in 1967 to similarly very Zen-like computer kind of art in 1968. And I realized there was a sort of a moment of transition there that I wanted to look at more closely. So I started delving into the history of concrete poetry and how it, in a way, was a gateway to computer art in lots of ways, because it's Computer Arts Society. And then I was lucky enough to meet Hans-Jörg Meyer, who had worked with Max Benzi in Stuttgart and lived in London and in England in 1966. It's actually Hans-Jörg Meyer, about whom I've now written a book called The Smell of Ink and Soil. It was actually Hans-Jörg who's responsible for introducing Yasha to Max Benzi. So, and out of that conversation came Cybernetics Serendipity, because there was an exhibition called Between Poetry and Painting in 1964. And the more I looked at some of the early concrete poetry material, the more I realized the emergence of zeros and ones in the 1950s in various poems, a lot of which then went back to even to Mallarmé and to Rimbaud, looking at everything and nothing. Began to realize that this history that came to sort of a fulcrum of prominence through a major exhibition in 1968 was built on a lot of earlier developments. And that sort of periods of incubation and transition where I'm still researching. So just finally, I was able last year to co-edit an issue of the Interdisciplinary Science Reviews Journal with Elizabeth Fisher. It's called The Experimental Generation, and it's looking at the praxis of interdisciplinarity in post-war British art between 1950 and 1970. And we invited Yasha to contribute. We invited George Mallon to contribute. He's written about his own work. Ernest to contribute. There's a wonderful interview between Francesca and Sunit. We invited Paul to contribute, and so he's written a text as well. And also Nick did a wonderful article about Boyasa. And I could probably make the text available in PDF if anyone wants to contact me. It's quite expensive to buy these things, but they did give us PDF. And I've written a text about the movement of the poem in the 1960s and zeros and ones and ones and circles. So please do get in touch if you'd like to read any of these articles. And I just wanted to pay tribute to my encounter with the various pioneering people, some of whom are still around, some who we miss terribly. And thank you for involving me tonight.
I think that was a collection of really interesting sort of reflections on the society and computer arts generally over the last 50 years. We've got a few more things to do this evening. First of all, I want to show you a current CAS project, which is our developing website archive and collection. Now, hopefully, you've been seeing these CAS50 flyers everywhere, and I've got a pile of them there, and I've left some on the desks and chairs and so on. I really would like everyone to take one away and just do two things, if nothing else. First of all, go to the website and secondly, make a contribution. And that could be a document you have, a reflection or whatever. It might be emailing me and saying, I want to tell you a story about some project and so on. Because what we're really trying to do with this CAS archive, I shall just bring it up, make it full screen. Everyone here is going to have to stretch their neck, but is actually look back at that 50-year period and just see, well, what have we got available that we might be able to start sharing online so that future artists and theorists can actually make sure that this material doesn't disappear, because there's a big misleading thing about the internet, and I know, having been involved with it since the web since '93, the internet since before then. Everyone thinks once it's on Google or on the internet, it's there forever, but it's not. Stuff disappears, and stuff that you put online, it might be indexed, but it disappears from search engines, it no longer works, and Flash and so on. So how can we build something where we know this stuff is going to be around for a decent period of time? And so what we've been working on, scratch can be bigger, and of course you can all go and see this, I'm not going to show you every aspect of the website, is providing a bit of a framework through which we can start collecting materials. So we're starting to make sure we record things and put our videos online. I'm recording this session. I'm also experimenting with a 3D camera. We might be recorded for posterity in 3D, but it may not work. I don't know. I've certainly got a few panoramas. I'm just playing with technology that we can record and things with. So over the coming year, I'm going to go to anything related to CAS50 and record it. And you'll start seeing videos appearing on our YouTube channel. But of course, it's not just about generating content. What we have here is I spent a really nice evening actually going through YouTube and bookmarking interesting videos, and there's amazing stuff available already online. So we're making it available so that you don't have to go through YouTube and make lists of it. We're also looking at materials that we've got and trying to get up with fixed web addresses that are indexed by Google and won't change. So we've got some great early materials, the Interact event, Event 1, catalogue from 1969. Interesting in their own right, but I think they're going to become, if anything, more interesting as we start to look back. An important thing is that we have a complete set of Page online. Now, Page is and was the journal of the Computer Art Society, and in particular, I would say, especially, not exclusively, but in the early years, I don't know of anywhere else that really documented the development of computer art, digital art, like Page, and we mentioned different editors and people involved, and so it's great to have this material. This, as far as I know, I think Paul has confirmed, is a complete set, despite a few holes. Page intentionally left blank, is what you told me? Yeah. So we have that, and of course, Page will continue coming out every now and then. There are plans for future issues. But we do have the website now and various other channels that do the job Page used to do, connecting people. We also have a fantastic collection of John Lansdowne's articles for BCS magazine. Again, documenting a period really in the development of computer and digital arts that is not so well documented. So these are quite important, I think, having these available. We also have, and I won't go through everything, but I'll point a few things out. Our speaker program between 2004 and 2016, really intense period of new CAS people talking about their work. Computer Image of the Month. I don't think Catherine's here, but Catherine Mason sort of started writing articles for the BCS magazine, and we have all of those. I'm in the process of, at the moment I have them all as PDFs and links, but after I finish my PhD, and you're pleased to know, I will be taking these articles, putting them into the website so that they get indexed. We start to have a searchable index of all this material. Back, just mention a couple more things. A bit of information about the CAS collection at the V&A. Of course, this was the big output of the CAS project, which was to start indexing some of the materials, or all of the materials, that CAS had collected and making sure they're preserved in our museum, so they're now part of the V&A collection. A little insight into that, but of course, if you want to know more, I guess the V&A exhibition at the moment is probably the best place to start. And then just as a little indicator of where this could go next. And this really does need people to get involved in the project. But I've started looking at exhibitions over the last 10 or 8 years. So the Technocultures project, which was the second research project based on CAS, finished in 2010. Well, let's make sure that we start cataloguing stuff that's happened since then. And of course, by the time we get to this period, the Computer Arts Society, even though it says arts, actually is something that's just a part of the computer art world. I'm a big believer that there's a Computer Arts Society aesthetic, almost movement. And hence I haven't attempted to document every single art exhibition that relates to digital, because that would be impossible, but I picked out a little pathway here through exhibitions from artists whose aesthetic and involvement in the Computer Arts Society was important. So this, I think, will grow, and I think this could be the basis of growing things in other directions. So we're starting to build an archive. We have the Cash Project website, Nick's thesis, Computer Arts and Technocultures project, information about some of the books that are available. And it's starting already to be a useful resource. I'm writing up my PhD, as I have been for a number of years. Going through this stuff is useful because it's my grounding, really. And I suppose to say something about the Computer Arts Society from my perspective is that when I started to re-engage with research, which was after having been a researcher after university, gone off to non-academic commercial work, I came back and I wanted a sort of grounding. And I actually started my grounding by looking at American computer artists, which is fine, you know, lots of great American computer artists. And it wasn't until I connected properly with CADS in about 2006 that I suddenly thought, that's my context. You know, I'm working here, I'm a systems artist, there's a history. And so I ground myself in the work here, so that's why CADS is important to me. And sort of finally, I'll talk a bit about the collection. So this is something we've put together for CAS50. And it started off with an exhibition in Leicester where myself and Ernest both based. And I approached 12 artists, and the category criteria for approaching the artist was a personal one. It was based on people I knew associated with CAS in various ways, and something that I felt was going to be coherent as a starting point for a collection. So I'm interested in, and I think a lot of people here probably are, the sort of organic, nature-inspired image making of people like Gordon Research and Daniel Brown. I'm also interested in drawing machines. Desmond Henry's in here as well, and some new work by Peter Bales. But I'm interested in generative work, so I obviously had to make sure Paul was in there. I snuck my own in there, of course. And we got work by Sue here. So I felt that we put together a little collection of 12 pieces, in fact more than 12 pieces, because some artists gave us more than one piece. And I thought that was quite a nice little snapshot. I envisaged it being just one exhibition, but the interest in it was such, and the support from the artists was such, that they were willing to donate works to this collection. So the project now is to grow it further over the coming year. So I have lists of artists, some whom I've approached already, some of whom I haven't, and some maybe who should approach me because I haven't thought to talk to them. But what I hope to have by the end of this 1 year period is maybe 30 to 40 artworks, 30 to 40 artists involved, maybe 50 artworks. That is a sort of celebratory collection of CAS. I'm not claiming that it's a year by year historic journey through CAS, but all of the artists I've approached have been happy to be involved. They appreciate, like all the people here do, the panelists here, the importance of CAS. So we'll end up producing a collection, and of course collections need a home. And so the next, because at the moment my studio has a leak in the ceiling, so it's not a good place to store important artwork like this. But it's not big enough. So what we're doing is looking for a location for it, and at the moment we think Montfort University in Leicester could be the place where we could locate this collection, establish it as what I call a living collection. It's not something that goes in a cupboard for 10 years and gets shown 10 years later, the next one. Something that can be lent out once the parameters are in place, is accompanied with ephemera and books and so on, that our students, but also students from around the world, can come to find out about the sort of work that was important in the development of CAS. So that's the CAS collection. The next showing will be in Brighton in September. Just got to dot all the I's and cross the T's and everything, but it is going to happen. And then after that, we want people to talk to us about places it could go. There will definitely also be an exhibition in June in Leicester of Phase 2, which was the 12 to 14 artists I've approached who are happy to be in the next part of the collection. So you think already, after 1 or 2 phases, 24, 25 artists? I think it'd be a great collection, and I do want to make it available. I know there are always practical things about insuring and transporting artwork, but if it's stuck in a cupboard because it's valuable, well, that's sort of missing out a little bit. I think all of us would agree. We'd rather see our art going places, occasionally maybe damaged. I wouldn't want that to happen to some of the pieces in the collection, but it will be out there, it will be seen. So that's what we're doing with an archive and collection. The CAS site has changed a lot over the last 6 months, so if you haven't been to it for a while, do go and visit. We are maintaining a really good up-to-date events guide. And as you can see, there's a lot going on at the moment. Paul's got an exhibition over at Washington, is that right? Yeah, and of course, just here in London, we've got an exhibition at the Mayor Gallery and Chance and Control at the V&A. We're here, and so on. I think Alex May's got an exhibition opening later in the week. If you let us know what's going on, and there's an events at CAS50.com address, we'll make sure it goes in here. So maybe the website becomes a valuable resource for people wanting to promote that now. So that's really what we're trying to do with this archival part of the project. And now we have a couple of things which are sort of related to the past, but also are part of the future as well. We're going to have a little mention of Cybernetics Serendipity catalogue reprint. I'm hoping that the oh great. Person's here. I think everyone knows about Cybernetics Serendipity. It just so happens it's 50 years old as well. Maybe it's not a coincidence. So I don't know if you want to speak through the microphone there.
I can speak for hours, but I'm going to be very short this time. Anyway, I am the editor of Studio International, and I'm extremely happy that we're celebrating the 50th anniversary, and we decided to reprint Cybernetics Serendipity. So here it is. It's better paper, same content. Original, we didn't change anything except putting a barcode, and that it was published by the Studio International Foundation. I'm very, very pleased. I myself actually graduated in computer science and remember moving objects from 2D to 3D with a PET computer with 4K memory. So it's I actually very much love what you guys are doing. And I saw Yasha yesterday, and she said that she was at the first meeting of your institution. So it's a pleasure for me to be here to actually introduce this reprint.
And how do we get hold of it?
We have to wait until August 2nd, because that's when the ICA had the exhibition. So it will be here. We have a lot of copies in the UK and the US, and will be available for you to buy.
We'll put a notice on the Computer Art Society website when we have to do that.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And one second. One second. The Mayor Gallery show and the National Academy of Science that we had a big celebration symposium for 3 days. It actually happened because of Studio International. So in any way, we try to help in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then we have one more thing, which is Francesca's new book, which, does that have a 50 connection? Yeah, okay. I know Ernest is getting a lot of 50-year awards at the moment, so yeah. Right. I won't introduce it apart from hand over to you, and then I'll pop an image up on the screen. I want to get the picture up, but it's in my email box, so I'm going to have to open up my email.
Well, I just. Shall I start?
Yeah, maybe start while I try and get the picture up. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Well, thank you very much, Nick, Sean, and everyone at CAS for your invitation to officially launch my book here tonight. I'm particularly happy to launch my book here for many reasons. One is that I've been a member of CAS for many years, and as we discussed during the panel moments ago, the activities of CAS have enriched and inspired my research and this book here again since the very beginning. Another reason is that EVA conference and here at BCS is a very special venue for me because my book adventure started precisely here 5 years ago when I met my editor, Dina Evans, who was at this conference looking for potential authors, and eventually I became one of them. The third reason why I'm really happy to launch my book here is that the subject of my book is here in person tonight. So it's been a real pleasure to work with Ernest on this project, and I'd like to invite Ernest in a few moments to say a few words about it. So for these reasons, I'm really, really grateful to present my very first book here with you tonight. I am an art historian, recently also a curator. I was born, grew up, and studied in Venice, and my background is in fine art and art history. When I moved to the UK years ago, I focused my research and my postgraduate studies on the history of computer art. And my approach has always been that of a traditional art historian, looking for the original sources and trying to understand the context in which an artist or movement has worked in. So this book represents my contribution to the field of art history. And the main challenge I set myself was to integrate computational art into traditional art historiography. As for the subject of my book, I first met Ernest in 2009 while I was a research fellow at Birkbeck, working with Nick Lambert on the CAT project, the Computer Art and Technoculture project. We were researching the computer art collection that American art historian Patrick Prince donated to the Victoria and Albert Museum, and this, together with the Computer Art Society collection, forms the basis of the Victoria and Albert Digital Art Collection. And I was immediately fascinated by Ernest's work, and we started working on a joint article that we then presented in Melbourne that year. And at that time, I realized that not much research has been done, in particular from an art historical perspective, on the pioneers of computational art. So I decided to concentrate my efforts in studying their work and at the same time giving these artists a voice. So through their work, in particular that of Ernest, I thought I could trace the history, or one history in particular, of media art. I then started to explore the work of Ernest Edmonds from different angles. I was particularly interested in understanding the intersections between the recent developments in computational art, of which Ernest is a pioneer, and past traditions such as constructivism and systems art. But what I found out during this process was a much more dense history that includes an artist's personal evolution from figurative art to color abstraction and computer art experimentation. In many cases, his work has offered challenges that helped and encouraged the development of new technologies and methods that bring life to research in technology and new media art. Historically speaking, the emergence of a younger generation of constructivism-inspired and UK-based artists in the late 60s, especially the Systems Group that was founded by Malcolm Hughes and Jeffrey Steele in 1969, had a significant consequence for Edmund's art. The Systems Group's primary focus was on the application of a systematic approach to generating work centered on the internal logic of the art object. And these notions had an impact on Ernest's art and its developments using computer technologies. And other important influences have informed his art, including a passion for Matisse and his colors, the power of modern minimalism, and also a deep interest in music and film, such as early 20th century and post-war music and French New Wave. So by combining the analysis of documentation material that I collected, that was collected by Ernest since the early 60s, and the archival material of his work collected by the Victoria and Albert Museum, and a series of interviews that I've recorded with him over the past 6 years, I traced, or at least I tried to trace, some of the origins of this sophisticated and almost unexplored field of contemporary art. Now, I have one sample copy with me that you're more welcome to browse through in a moment, and one is over there next to the big banner. And there are also some flyers that you're more than welcome to take home. And since Routledge has not been able to provide any copies for sales today, I've decided to buy some myself and to sell them at a nominal price of £50, which is more than half price if you really want them, just for tonight. I only have 3 copies available, so if you're interested, just get in touch with me later. And because I'm a very good bargaining, and I was once called the Merchant of Venice, seriously, I managed to get a 20% discount code from Routledge. So if you decide to buy the book online, this is the code. Oh, wow, Sean, that's great. That's the code. I think it comes out automatically from the website, and you get the 20% discount. So now, before we come to a close, I'd like to invite the artist, Ernest Edmonds, to say a few words about this amazing book. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Francesca. Well, that's the first thing I really want to say is thank you, Francesca, for writing this book and for putting all that work in. It's a marvelous experience for me. If I could add something to what Francesca said herself about the book, is she's cleverly used the excuse of looking at my work to tell a story about what's been going on over in the art world in this context over this period of time. So she tells us a lot more in the book than about my work. My work is kind of like used as a theme upon which she hangs a lot of other stuff, and I think that's been a very clever way of writing the book. From my point of view, I'd like to say the experience has been amazing, and I don't know what any of you might learn from the book by reading it, but I can tell you I've learned a great deal about my work in the process of Francesca writing it, it's revealed a great deal to me, maybe even more than it's revealed to her or that's in the book. And I recommend, if you want to know more about yourself, which maybe not such a good thing, is get someone to write a book about you. It's the best way to learn. And the depth that Francesca has gone into surprised me also, because she goes back to my school days. And I believe that some of the illustrations in the book even are things that I painted when I was a schoolboy. So that, again, things I've forgotten that she somehow discovered in my studio. So it's been an amazing experience and a learning experience for me. And so I'm sure that it has new stuff in it because it is new to me and new to everyone. But most of all, it's a book about much more than just my work. And let me thank Francesca from the depth of my heart for all the work she's done in this session.
I think it's wine time. So thank you very much.
So good because it brought the Americans over and the Europeans. And there was lots
Maybe you could get the information to make sure that it goes into the archive.
I will, not very well, but yeah, okay,
Thank you.
We say a few words about the book.
Good, yeah, I think as you can tell from the audience reaction, people wanted to see it.
Yasha was adamant about me having a very low price. So it's going to be affordable for everyone.
What sort of price it like to be? I've got a couple of copies of the original. I got one, I finished it on two, I saw one going for £50, but I have to have that.
In the US, when you try to search, it's 400. Keep those.
Hi, my name is Jack Chapter. Is there any way I can get an introduction from the gallery that comes to the Human Chapter?
Well, actually,
It's worth £1,000.
the thing I will show now, and it's they're very nice.
Now, yeah.
Can I show you my